You know, there's a quote that gets tossed around the productivity world constantly. It's one of those lines you see on Instagram, over a picture of a mountain at sunrise.
Hmm.
It's usually attributed to Tony Robbins, though I think Tim Ferriss really drilled it into the modern ethos. The quote is, "The quality of your life is determined by the quality of your questions."
It's a bold statement. It feels a bit like a bumper sticker at first glance, doesn't it?
It does.
But if you actually stop scrolling and dig into the cognitive science behind it, it stops being a slogan and starts looking a lot more like a user manual for the human brain.
That is exactly what we're doing today. We are dusting off the user manual. Because I found this stat while prepping for this deep dive, and honestly, it terrified me. The average human brain processes something like, 50,000 thoughts a day?
It is a staggering amount of noise.
Yeah,
Just this constant hum.
it is. But the scary part isn't the volume, it's the repetition. Research suggests that for most people, about 90% of those thoughts are the exact same as the thoughts they had the day before.
We are literally running on a loop.
And that's the trap. We think we're thinking, we think we're analyzing the world in real time, but mostly we're just remembering. We're running scripts.
Right.
And if you're anxious or stuck in a business rut or, struggling in a relationship, it's usually because that script is broken, but you just keep reading the lines over and over again.
So the premise here is that if we want to change the output, whether that's our mood, our productivity, how we lead a team, we have to change the input. We have to disrupt the loop.
Exactly. And the most effective surgical tool for disrupting a mental loop is a strategic question. It forces the brain to stop predicting and start processing. It's like throwing a wrench into the gears of that autopilot.
So welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is to explore strategic questioning. We aren't just talking about being curious or, whimsical.
Yeah.
We're talking about specific, almost aggressive questions you can ask yourself and others to rewire how your brain processes reality. And we have a really eclectic stack of sources to back this up today. We aren't just relying on one guru. We're pulling from Tim Ferriss's productivity frameworks, some rigorous academic studies from the NIH on stress reduction.
And the immune system.
And the immune system. Japanese therapeutic models like Nikan therapy, and even corporate playbooks on psychological safety.
It's a mix of wild experiments and hard science, which is honestly my favorite place to be. I love it when the woo-woo meets the data.
It really is the sweet spot.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating is that whether you're looking at a CEO trying to save a failing company or a therapist trying to help a patient with severe anxiety, the mechanism is surprisingly similar.
Changing the question changes the brain's focus.
That's it. Let's start with the self. Let's
Sure.
start with disrupting that status quo in our own heads. We have this list of 17 questions that changed my life from Tim Ferriss. Now, Ferriss is known for deconstructing success, but some of these questions feel less like productivity hacks and more like dynamite.
They are stress tests. They're designed to find the structural weaknesses in your assumptions.
Right.
The one that jumped out at me immediately, and I think anyone who feels overworked is going to feel this, is the idea of, what if I did the opposite for 48 hours?
It sounds reckless, doesn't it? Just do the opposite.
It does. It sounds like a recipe for getting fired. If my boss tells me to write a report and I do the opposite, I'm in trouble.
Well, sure, don't break the law or violate your contract.
Yeah.
But think about the logic in a competitive or creative context. If you are a salesperson and every other salesperson is calling clients between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m., you are just part of the noise.
You're competing with the herd.
Exactly. So the opposite would be calling them at 7 a.m. or 8 p.m.
Or not calling at all and sending a handwritten note via FedEx.
There you go. The point isn't necessarily that the opposite is always the right answer. The point is that the status quo is often just a habit, not a strategy. We do things because that's how it's done. When you ask, what if I did the opposite? You force yourself to step out of that majority mindset. You're testing the variable.
It's like if everyone is zigging, you zag just to see what happens. If it fails, fine. But if it works, you have a massive advantage because no one else is there.
Exactly.
But there's another question in the Ferriss stack that hit me even harder. And I'll be honest, I felt personally attacked by this one.
Let me guess. The antelope and the field mouse.
The antelope and the field mouse. Can we unpack this analogy? Because I think a lot of us are living this mistake every single day.
Oh, it's a brilliant visualization of energy expenditure. So imagine you are a lion. A lion is a predator. It needs meat to survive.
Okay.
Now, a lion is perfectly capable of hunting field mice.
Field mice are everywhere. They're slow. They're easy to catch.
Right. And every time you catch one, you get a little dopamine hit. I did something. I succeeded. I caught the mouse. But here's the biological reality. A lion will starve to death eating field mice. The caloric energy required to hunt, chase, and digest them is actually greater than the caloric return you get from eating them.
So you are slowly dying while looking busy.
Exactly. That is a terrifying image.
Starving to death with a full stomach.
Now contrast that with the antelope. The antelope is fast, it's smart, it's dangerous. It takes strategy and patience to catch. You might fail a few times. It's frustrating. But one antelope
Feeds the lion for a long time.
for a long time.
So bringing this back to our inboxes, the field mice are the emails, the Slack messages, the quick checks.
Precisely. They feel like work. They feel like productivity. I answered 50 emails today. I cleared my notifications.
Right.
Great, but did you move the needle on your career? Did you advance the project? Or did you just tread water?
So the question Ferris asks to filter this is, which one of these tasks, if done, would render all the rest either easier or completely irrelevant? That's the antelope.
That is the antelope. It stops you from just checking boxes and forces you to ask, does this actually matter? It's an extreme application of the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule.
But it requires you to be comfortable with ignoring the mice, which is hard because the mice are noisy.
So noisy.
Mm.
Speaking of extreme, he has another one that pushes this even further. If I could only work 2 hours per week on my business, what would I do?
This one hurts to answer. Because if you really sit with it, don't just brush it off, you realize that 98% of what you do is arguably fluff.
Fluff, that feels harsh. I feel very busy.
We all feel busy, but busy isn't the same as effective. If you literally had a gun to your head and only had 120 minutes to keep your job or your business alive, you wouldn't be color-coding your calendar.
No. You wouldn't be in that status update meeting listening to people talk about work they haven't done yet.
You would be doing the one thing that generates value.
It's a constraint that forces clarity. You don't actually have to work only 2 hours, but planning as if you do changes how you work the other 38.
It reveals the antelope.
Exactly. But here is where we need to bridge the gap between productivity guru and neuroscientist. Because Ferris emphasizes something very specific in all of these exercises.
Yeah.
He says you have to write these answers down.
Yes.
This isn't just a mental exercise to do while driving.
Right, and that connects directly to the study we have from the NIH and the research from UCLA about affect labeling.
Yeah.
Because I always thought journaling was just, keeping a diary. Dear diary, today was hard.
A bit juvenile, maybe.
Yeah, it felt a bit juvenile.
It's easy to dismiss it as that. But the neuroscience is surprisingly robust. When you are stressed or overwhelmed by all those field mice, your amygdala is lighting up.
That's the lizard brain, the fear center, the fight or flight switch.
Correct. It's screaming danger, overload, panic. But research by Dr. Matthew Lieberman at UCLA shows that the moment you put that feeling into words, when you assign a linguistic label to the emotion activity in the amygdala, significantly decreases.
And where does that energy go? It doesn't just disappear.
It shifts. It moves to the right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex.
Which is the adult in the room.
Basically, it's the part of the brain responsible for logic, planning, and impulse control. So, quite literally, by writing, I am feeling anxious because I have too many tasks and I'm afraid I'll fail, you are physically moving the neural processing from the emotional center to the rational center.
You are calming your brain down just by defining the problem.
It's the concept of name it to tame it.
Exactly.
You are turning a vague threat into a tangible object that your logical brain can handle. And Dr. James Pennebaker's research takes this even further into the physical realm. He found that writing about trauma or stress for just 15 to 20 minutes a day can actually improve immune function.
Wait, hold on. Writing in a journal helps your physical body heal wounds faster. That sounds like magic.
It sounds like snake oil.
It does.
But it's biochemistry. Stress creates cortisol. Cortisol suppresses the immune system. It keeps your body in an emergency state where it doesn't prioritize repair. If you reduce the chronic stress load through this affect labeling and processing, your immune system unsuppresses. Your T cells work better. You heal faster.
That is wild. It really highlights how connected the mind and body are. But there's a catch, isn't there? You can't just do it once and be cured forever.
Right. It's like going to the gym. You don't get abs from one sit-up.
Yeah.
The research suggests consistency is key, 10 to 15 minutes a day.
Okay.
But, and I want to play devil's advocate against myself here, we have another source in the stack, Hot Guru, who warns against doing this the wrong way.
Right. He talks about the danger of introspection. He says it's like driving while staring in the rearview mirror.
And he has a valid point. There is a very fine line between reflection and rumination.
How do we define the difference? Because to me, thinking about my problems feels like reflection.
Reflection leads to insight and action. Rumination leads to looping. Rumination is when you ask why, questions that don't have answers. Why am I like this? Why does this always happen to me? Why is the world so unfair? That's the navel-gazing that Sadhguru warns against.
Right.
It actually increases anxiety because you're reinforcing the neural pathways of the problem without ever finding a solution. You're just digging the rut deeper.
So how do we reflect without spiraling? How do we stop the why me loop and actually get the benefits of the writing?
The answer is structure. You need a framework that forces you out of your own head. You need better questions. And that brings us to Nikan therapy.
This is the Japanese introspection technique. I love how specific this is. It shifts the focus entirely off of me, and onto relationships.
Right. Nikan means looking inside. But the method is about looking at how you interact with the world. It asks 3 very specific questions about a person or a situation in your life.
Okay, let's walk through them. Question 1.
Question 1. What have I received from them? This forces you to acknowledge support. It builds gratitude, which is physiologically impossible to feel at the same time as anger.
Question 2.
What have I given to them? This is about self-respect and contribution. It helps you see your own agency.
And question 3, which I think is the kicker, this is the one that hurts.
What troubles or difficulties have I caused them?
Oof. That is not a question we like to ask ourselves. We are usually the hero of our own movie.
Exactly. Most of our internal monologue is about what we are owed or how we were wronged. They were rude to me. They didn't appreciate me.
Right.
Nikan forces you to look at the ledger objectively. It asks you to admit where you might have been the villain in the story, or at least where you were an inconvenience.
It seems like a powerful way to snap out of a victim mentality. You can't really wallow in self-pity when you're listing the specific ways you made your spouse's mourning difficult.
Exactly. It builds accountability.
Yeah.
And speaking of structure, we have this NIH study on reflective questioning activity, or RQA, that compared this directly. They had one group just answer a single question. How are you feeling about this stress? Just venting.
Which is what most of us do when we talk to a friend over a drink. We just vent.
Right. And the other group had to answer a sequence of 9 structured questions. Things like, what is the situation? What is the most troubling thought? What evidence do you have for that thought? Is there another way to look at it?
So basically, cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, in a worksheet.
Exactly. And the results were clear. The group that just vented often felt worse or the same. They just relived the stress. They strengthened the loop. The group that did the 9 questions took longer, about 9 minutes versus 1 minute, but they had a significant decrease in stress.
Because they didn't just loop the thought, they dissected it.
It's called behavioral chaining. You trace the trigger to the thought, to the feeling, to the behavior, and then you challenge it. You ask, does the trigger actually justify this thinking?
That seems to be the secret sauce. You have to interrupt the chain. If you just let the chain rattle around in your head, it makes noise. If you lay it out on paper, you can see the weak links.
Perfectly put. Structure is the safety net that catches you before you fall into rumination.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about fixing our own brains. We're hunting antelope, we're writing down our fears, we're doing Nikan reflection. But what about the people around us?
Yeah.
Because strategic questioning isn't just a solo sport, it's how we connect.
And this is where we have to unlearn some really bad social habits. We all do the how are you, I'm fine dance.
It's a script, it's not a question. If I ask the barista, how are you, I'm not expecting them to tell me about their childhood trauma.
It's phatic expression. It's just noise we make to acknowledge presence. It conveys zero information. If you want to actually connect or check on a friend who might be struggling, you need better data. You need a better probe.